This 10-year-old daughter helps her unconscious father in the most resourceful way. In life, we often forget that even kids can sometimes be wiser or smarter than adults. We often forget to give them credit for the things they do. We perceive children as the ones that need help. We fail to see that sometimes they can actually be the ones giving help. Today's story is about a reserved Texas girl who amazed everyone with just how innovative she was without asking for anyone's help. It was just like any other day. There was nothing eventful happening at the house. As the day went on, 10-year-old Gracie and her father Jeff decided to make some changes to their house. They were working around the house, placing furniture to different positions. Her father was just helping his little girl to make her room look better. Gracie wanted to make some changes in her room so that it looked better than ever. She wanted to make use of her dad as he'd be helpful in moving and rearranging her furniture that would otherwise be too heavy. She wanted to feel nice about her room, so she asked her dad to make her dreams come to reality so she could enjoy the room more. Everything was going smoothly and the two were actually having fun redecorating Gracie's room. But then, as he was moving an especially heavy armoire, Jeff suddenly collapsed on the floor. Imagine the amount of shock the little girl must have felt when she witnessed her dad pass out right in front of her. She didn't know what to do next, rushing beside him trying to wake him up with no success. But after a few minutes, Jeff finally woke up from his state of unconsciousness. To see that her dad had just fainted all of a sudden right in front of her made her very sure that there was something terribly wrong with him. He was doing fine just a few seconds ago, and for him to pass out in a matter of moments, there may be some internal, serious health issues within him. So when the 33-year-old father regained his consciousness, his body was still quite weak. When he opened his eyes, he got to his feet and was with great effort able to stumble to the couch. He moved to the sofa to sit down. Even he was completely shocked to see himself before this, as he was fine the whole day before moving the furniture. Even when he got onto the couch with much difficulty, he still couldn't function properly. Each time his daughter Gracie tried to ask him what was wrong and begged for an explanation, he would keep fainting over and over. The 10-year-old little girl must have been extremely traumatized to see that her dear father was acting like this. The little girl was in shock and felt helpless as she watched her dad pass out multiple times in front of her. For the short amount of times her father was conscious, Gracie could see from his face that he was very disoriented. It must have been very scary for her because he'd give an expression of confusion followed by his eyes rolling at the back of his head. So there they were in Gracie's room, father stumbling in and out of consciousness while his 10-year-old daughter looks on, confused as to what to do next. The little girl was there with her dad as he struggled to gain control over his body. After a few minutes, her instincts finally kicked in and she realized she needed to call for help. As her father's condition didn't seem to get better anytime soon, Gracie started to feel worried. She was unsure whether to just wait it out or to do something herself. Since she was just 10 years old, she can't blame the girl for feeling so helpless. Since she didn't know what to do herself, she decided that it would be best if she called someone else for help. So then at that moment, she hurried to call others for help. We all know that these days, even kids always keep with them phones, like smartphones that have become a good source of entertainment and recreation. She promptly looked for the phone and checked within the room, but as she looked around and checked everywhere, she found a very big problem. As we all know, bad luck tends to pop up whenever we're going through a difficult time. This happened to Gracie as well. When she finally found her phone, she realized the cell phone hadn't been charged. In fact, there was no battery left. Then she checked to see if her unconscious dad had his phone with him, but his pockets proved empty. Even if she wanted to use his phone and question him about the location, Jeff was unconscious, so she had no way of finding out. The option of her asking where he'd kept his phone was out of the question. As she continued to worry and tried to figure things out, she realized another thing. She discovered she had another option. When Gracie was thinking of what she could do next to help her father, she came up with a good idea. She realized her brother owns an iPod Touch, and so she went into his room to go get it. She knew that this was going to help as she could now make use of FaceTime to call her father's cell phone. Then she could use that to call for help. As soon as she grabbed the iPod, Gracie was quick to make use of FaceTime. She knew the call would make her father's phone ring out loud, so as soon as she made the call, she made sure to listen attentively. As expected, she could hear the phone ringing from the next room, and Gracie hurried to go make use of her father's phone. When Gracie went to the next room, she found the phone ringing loud and clear. She took the phone in her hands and then proceeded quickly to call 911. When she told them about what had happened with her father, the officials told her they'd send a team to her house immediately. She then had to wait for a few minutes that felt like forever. After patiently waiting, there was a knock on the door. Gracie then quickly went to the door to open it. Since the people at the door were wearing uniforms, Gracie could tell these were the people that have been asked to help her beloved father. "Where is he?" asked one of the men in uniforms to Gracie, who took them to her dad. After Gracie was asked where her dad was, she took the man to the room where her father was, lying there unconscious, motionless on the couch, and very much still unconscious. These men knew that they needed to check on him immediately. When they read his heart rate, they realized he was in a terrible condition. It was 24 beats per minute. If you don't know just how dangerous the heart rate is, allow us to explain. The normal heart rate for an adult typically ranges from 60 to 100 beats per minute. To hear that Jeff's heart rate is just 24 is something truly alarming. Was he going to make it, and does this mean he was about to die? It was a tense moment for all. When paramedics arrived on site, Jeff was quickly taken care of. Even while he was riding in the ambulance, Jeff would gain consciousness then lose it again multiple times. Every time he came out of his unconsciousness, he would feel as though he'd been covered in something. However, the scary part was he wouldn't be able to see anything. Even if he wasn't fully conscious, he confirmed that he could still hear the paramedics when they exclaimed, "Stay with me, Jeff." Even though he could hear this, he was a little too confused to even respond to them. And as he'd been repeatedly doing so before in the house, Jeff then lost all his senses and fell into unconsciousness once again. When he was finally placed in the ICU, dopamine was administered. Even the blood pressure medicine that Jeff took regularly was given to him. As he was carefully studied and taken care of, Jeff's wife Kelly was making her way towards the hospital. With her, she had Gracie. It was such a terrifying time for the whole family as Jeff's condition was not too good. When his wife and darling daughter arrived at the ICU, Jeff's condition had managed to finally remain stable. After a few minutes passed, Jeff could finally snap back to consciousness. As his daughter had been such a crucial part of his caretaking, he made sure to give thanks to her. Gracie is indeed commendable for not freaking but remaining calm and calling 911. As the night went by, the doctors took Jeff off of his meds. They also stripped off the dopamine to ensure that his heart would be able to get back to its normal rhythm. After a very problematic day, his heart rate could finally remain normal. He was not falling unconscious anymore and was able to join the conversations with his family. After a short while, he showed even more progress. He was able to not only talk but even managed to walk by himself. Even after investigating what had taken place with Jeff that day, there was still some confusion with what Jeff had experienced. The doctors that had been working on getting Jeff better could not pin down the reason why he passed out in the first place. So what the doctors did was they ran multiple tests to get to the bottom of why Jeff had fallen unconscious in his house the other day. After they ran some tests, the doctors finally came to a conclusion. The reason behind him becoming so undone was something he'd been taking in order to prevent them from happening. It was truly a confusing mess. What had happened to Jeff is something that would surely make you scratch your head. In a weird twist of fate, the blood pressure medication that Jeff had been using for so many years was the reason that caused his heart rate to slow. It turns out that his efforts of trying to remain healthy and going was behind him becoming such an unhealthy mess. To make matters worse, there were a few other things that Jeff had become a victim of. Doctors pointed out that there was another thing that caused him to become so unstable. After the medical test results came out, the doctors at the hospital told Jeff that he could have developed some sort of neurological issue. This obviously had some consequences. As of now, Jeff was in good hands and became good as new in no time. However, he now had to be extremely cautious and careful as to how he handles himself, because his experience was truly a wake-up call. His daughter, who was there during the time he passed out, must have gone through some of the after effects too. Gracie, in fact, has learned a lot. What does Jeff's wife Kelly Fredrickson have to say about all the things that took place that fateful day? Well, she reveals that she's more than proud of how her daughter treated the whole situation. She's glad to know that her daughter turned out to be such a responsible girl who didn't panic but rather made sure her dad was in the care of professionals. Kelly also revealed that Jeff's horrifying episode was actually Gracie's first real emergency. She admits that the two of them have not taught their kids how to react or given instruction if ever their father loses a sense of self. She was pleasantly surprised to know that her daughter was smart enough to quickly contact the professionals, who came in time to save her husband. But like they say in life, there's never a mistake but a lesson. So after this horrific incident, the Fredricksons have made sure to instruct their kids about emergency behavior so they know exactly what to do. The couple is glad to know that Gracie didn't freak out on her father, as that could have led to something even worse. They are very proud of their darling daughter who did the right thing by dialing 911 and letting them handle her father in the best manner possible. It was truly inspiring in a way to see that a little 10-year-old girl could remain so calm and collected during the time that could have left most adults unable to think straight or become resourceful. So just a day after Jeff had been admitted to the hospital, Kelly decided to post a Facebook update that read, "We appreciate all the texts, calls, prayers, and offers to help. We're truly blessed to have so many wonderful people in our lives. She wanted to give thanks to all those who had placed her helping hands out to their family. She then went on about how Gracie had coped with a traumatizing experience. Special prayers for Grace. She's been so strong and was so heroic Friday. She has since been having emotional times and having a hard time leaving the hospital, she added on the Facebook post. It's natural for a 10-year-old to become a little more emotional after witnessing her dad collapse. The post then explained that Gracie was coping well with all that had happened, stating that she was remaining very strong. She was able to stay strong for her daddy and brother, reveals Kelly Fredrickson. If Gracie had not been so sensible, it would have resulted in something as bad as Jeff losing his life, but they were all lucky she did the smart thing. There's something else that little Gracie had managed to learn from this rather scary incident. It wasn't just another shocking incident that was life-threatening. This experience, though traumatizing, was something the whole family learned a valuable lesson from. Gracie also learned something that everyone living in this day and age must too. So what was the most crucial lesson that Gracie Fredrickson could sum up from her father's near-death incident? Well, the 10-year-old girl learned something we can all take a note on too. It is that we should always keep our cell phone charged. She had made it very clear that her phone having no battery made her realize how important keeping phones charged is during times of emergency. Since we're living in an age where smartphones and technology rule over our daily lives, this is something that may seem trivial but is truly important to remember. You just never know how important it may be to call in a pinch. Gracie was just lucky because she could find another phone, her dad's phone, just in time to call an ambulance. We know that kids these days are slowly becoming more and more dependent on their digital devices and gadgets. We often criticize them for constantly being on their phones and tablets, but this story proves just how important they can be in times of an emergency. If it weren't for the phone in the other room, imagine the fate of Jeff Fredrickson. If Gracie was not familiar with using FaceTime, she could not have made the call from the iPod, and her dad may not have been rescued in time. It goes to show that these devices do have their boon and bane, that we can't just limit them as distractions or a nuisance. The phone call alone managed to save Jeff's life, so that amounts it to more than just an accessory.